I'll introduce the next speaker. Next speaker is Sanyukta. She is my colleague at Mahatma Gandhi Hospital in the Department of Radiology, and she has special interest in MR imaging. She is currently in the UK doing a fellowship and probably preparing for her FRCR examination. So she's going to cover the radiological aspects of CA rectum. Sanyukta.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Kapoor, sir, thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And assuming that I'm the junior most here, I'm very honored to be part of this team. And let's continue with the lecture. So we're talking about the imaging aspects of carcinoma rectum. And being a radiologist, I'll be talking about just an overview. I'll be first talking about the MRI protocol. When can the clinician send a person for a MRI if he's suspecting a CA rectum? What are the relevant anatomy on MRI, how to identify? And to stage the rectal CA, the restaging of rectal CA post NACT, which has also assumed a major role. The reporting templates we advise and we follow. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, please carry on. Yes.
Okay. The reporting templates, and then we'll talking about in a case-based learning pattern, just to give a brief overview of how the MRI imaging is on the CA rectum. So, do we need an endorectal coil for the patient preparation recommendations? What we should follow for if you are referring a patient for a CA rectum MRI? So, do you need tell the patient to fast? So we can put enema. Do we need put enema? Do you need the serum creatinine levels? So we need to put a IV contrast. I would say none of these. So we do not need an endorectal coil. We are not probably using this like since ages. And we do not need an enema preparation. We do not need an IV contrast. We just maybe in some cases we can use Buscopan or any other spasmolytic, IM or oral tablets, but even then it usually suffices without this spasmolytics also. So this is the basic MRI protocol, and we just need no IV contrast, just we need a high resolution T2 weighted images, and these T2 weighted images have to be orthogonal to the tumor. So basically it has axial oblique and coronal oblique to the tumor. Now this is very important. When the technician is not knowing where to take the scan, how to acquire the scan, this all will lead to a misreading of the scan. So we need to tell, and we need to have the proper clinical notes also as to where the colonoscopy detected the tumor, so as to give us a confidence level where to detect the tumor and how to acquire a proper imaging. So this is how, in this picture, this is the sagittal T2 weighted image, and we can see the white hyperintense urine in the bladder. So this is a T2 weighted image, and we are acquiring a sagittal oblique. This is the tumor, and we are acquiring a orthogonal plane. So this is how we acquire the axial oblique planes. If we do not tell the technician where the tumor is, he will acquire a normal axial planes, axial scans, and this will not suffice to what we exactly need. So, and similarly, we need a coronal oblique perpendicular. Similarly, for the low tumors, the sphincter anatomy to delineate it, exactly, we need a orthogonal planes. Another important, so basically, I'll be talking about the T2 weighted images and the diffusion images. These are the mainstay in MRI in delineating the rectal anatomy. And preferably a 3 Tesla is preferred, and we use a phased array coil. So this, I think ma'am has already told in detail, and this is the mainstay of the surgical treatment, TME, or the total mesorectal excision. We'll be talking about the anatomy of the mesorectal fascia soon. So basically, MRI informs the treatment decisions, and the type of surgery, if it's a low anterior, the distal margin of the treated tumor should be above 1 centimeter line above the anorectal junction. And here on MRI, we can define how is the anorectal junction, where's the distal margin of the treated tumor, so that is, accordingly the treatment decisions are made. Whether the patient has to undergo an APR, extra elevated APR, pelvic exenteration, or he can underwent a local excision and selective pelvic lymph node dissection. So this is just a pictorial description of the various surgeries. And if the tumor is high above in the upper rectum, the patient can undergo low anterior resection. If it's already involving the anorectal junction and you cannot find a margin, it's less than 1 centimeter, and then it has to undergo the abdominal perineal excision. And then we have the newer intersphincteric surgeries where we can save the external sphincter. So this is usually the treatment plan we follow. And the localized or the T1 or T2 stages go for upfront surgery or the endoscopic resection, and the locally advanced, for example, in the T3C stage or the MRF positive or the nodes positive or the EMI positive, will undergo a neoadjuvant. Further, we'll do an MRI restaging. If it's a clinically complete response, then the patient usually goes to a surveillance via endoscopy, CEA levels, or MRI. If the surgery is planned after MRI staging, a surgical follow-up surgery can be done. Or if it's again, if it needs another course of chemoradiation, then he will undergo a long course of chemoradiation. So we do have challenges in MRI reporting. And we need to know the posterior pelvic compartment anatomy and its variants. We just talked about the various fascias, how we see those on MRI. I'll be telling you. And some very early, very low rectal tumors, and the mucinous one are the notorious ones. But how to look and be sure of the pathology, the mucinous pathology in MRI, and the clinical tumor features which we need to tell about. So what do we, the rectum we know as the lowermost GI part, and about, we divide it into high, mid, low, and that's from the anal verge to the sigmoid takeoff or the rectosigmoid junction. The low part contains the anal canal as well, and we divide it as 0 to 5 centimeter. The mid is 5 to 10, and high is 10 to 15. There might be variable definitions according to surgeons and anatomists, but this is what we generally follow on MRI. The sigmoid takeoff, how do we define that? When the vertical part of the rectum becomes horizontal. This is more obviously seen on the axial scans, but here also with the anterior peritoneal reflection where it attaches to the anterior rectal wall. And much above that will be the sigmoid canal. That's the peritonealized part. So, and the anal verge. So anal verge is the lowermost hypointense line, and that would be easily seen and easily seen on the sagittal oblique scans. The rectal wall anatomy is very beautifully seen on the high resolution T2 weighted images. So we have the hypo-intense mucosa, which is then surrounded by hyper-intense submucosa. Now, the submucosa would be generally depends upon the distension of the rectum, and it's not usually like very properly seen, but when seen, it's hyper-intense submucosa fat. Then we have the muscularis propria, and this is where the MRI assumes importance, because the muscularis propria is a very hypo-intense line. It is the inner circular and outer longitudinal muscle layer, and usually the tumor is of intermediate intensity. And when it's a T3 stage, it has already reached the muscularis propria. So it invades the muscularis propria, and we can easily identify the most invading margin of the tumor, as well as the distance of the tumor from the MRF and the CRM status. So mesorectal fascia. So mesorectal fascia, as we just talked about in the surgical anatomy, it's the fascia covering the covering the rectum, mostly in the lower part, and in the upper and the mid rectum, further it becomes peritonealized anteriorly and laterally. But in the lower part, it's on the MRI and the T2 weighted scans, it's seen as a thin, hypo-intense, fine layer completely surrounding the rectum. So we have this CRM, and you need to define the CRM status on MRI. And how do we, what is the CRM? Is the distance of the tumor to the mesorectal fascia. It basically defines the resection plane for the surgeon. And it has to be defined in terms of everything, like the tumor distance from the MRF, it's the nodal distance from the MRF, and the deposits, if any present, the deposits, whether they're sitting on the mesorectal fascia or what is the distance away. So usually if it's the less than 1 mm, then it becomes a CRM positive, or CRM is involved. So MRA is highly accurate for CRM, 94 to 100% sensitive, and 85 to 88% specific. So this is how the CRM involvement will look like. The distance of the tumor from the mesorectal fascia, or the nodal node, if it's sitting on the MRF or not, on the mesorectal fascia or not. Then a very important another key structure would be anterior peritoneal reflection. Now this will this will be really helpful to define the treatment strategy. And how is it identified? So basically, it's a very thin hypointense line presenting as a seagull sign on the axial scans, and it might present like in the sagittal. You can see a very thin line, thin hypointense line. So this is the anterior peritoneal reflection coming from the anterior rectal wall up to the superior part of the bladder in men. And if it's we do have if it's a women, then it's extending up to the torus uterinus. So basically, identifying this anterior peritoneal reflection is easier in sagittal planes. If you just scroll the scan, you find a thin hypointense line extending from the anterior rectal wall. So this is how we just talked about. The upper high rectum is peritonealized on anteriorly and laterally. Peritoneal reflection, the mid rectum is anteriorly, and in the lower rectum, it's completely extraperitoneal and surrounded by the mesorectal fascia. So mesorectal fascia, then anteriorly it merges with the retroprostatic or the denovelar fascia, and posteriorly it's the presacral fascia. Now, just to talk about the relevant anatomy in this lower rectal tumors or the anal canal involving the sphincter anatomy. So the internal sphincter is a muscular layer, and we can see it as a hypointense layer. This is the axial scans. These are the coronal scans. The intersphincteric plane, on the other hand, is a fat line plane, and then it is again considered as a plane for resection. This is a fat containing hyperintense plane. Then we have the hypointense external sphincter. External sphincter, the puborectalis, the upper margin of the puborectalis, the levator ani, the horizontally shaped, and then this forms the external sphincter. So external sphincter is again can be divided into deep, superficial, and subcutaneous. And the subcutaneous is the lowermost limit of the external sphincter, the hypointense line, and usually merges with the skin. So in the colonoscopy, there might be few discrepancies in the level of the tumor from the anal verge by the gastroenterologist and by the MRI specialist, because we take the tumor distance from the subcutaneous part of the external sphincter. So this is all we know. Levator ani muscles form the pelvic floor. These are best seen on the coronal T2 planes as horizontal. The puborectalis muscle cinches in the funnel and contributes the fiber to the external anal sphincter. And for tumors below the puborectalis, the CRM is defined as the intersphincteric plane or the levator muscle. So if the tumor has invaded the intersphincteric plane or the levator muscles, then it becomes a CRM involved tumor. So this is how we present the report in a template. This is by the Society of Abdominal Radiology. And the primary tumor, we give the distance to the anal verge, distance to the top of the sphincter complex or the anorectal junction, relationship to anterior peritoneal reflection, whether the tumor is above the anterior peritoneal reflection, whether it is straddling or just at the level of the anterior peritoneal reflection, or whether it's below, the total length of the tumor location, whether it's in the upper, mid, or the lower rectum involvement, morphology of the tumor. This is very important to know about where the tumor is in a circumferential manner. So whether it's completely circumferential, whether it's semi-annular, partly annular, and how does the tumor is? Is it a polypoid lesion? Is it a mucinous one? No mucin, some mucin, or mostly mucin? So mucin component is really hyper intense avidly hyperintense on T2. Then we can give the T staging. So these are the steps. First, we need to find the tumor. So the tumor is, as we talked about, it's the intermediate intensity. It has elevated edges. So this is how you identify the tumor. And then we have to describe the tumor, the distance from the anal verge. The distance from the anal verge has to be taken along the planes as just as the colonoscope goes. So we take a slightly diagonal plane according the luminal distance from the anal verge. Similarly, the location, the relationship to the anterior peritoneal reflection, the T3 stage finally. If it is a T1, T2, it is limited to the submucosa. If it's invading the muscularis propria, it becomes a T3 stage. Then T3, again, we need to identify the distance, the maximum distance beyond the rectal wall. And then we have to specify whether it's a MRF positive or MRF negative. And if it is anteriorly going beyond the peritoneal reflection involving the other organs, then it becomes a T4A stage. So T1, T2 are confined to rectal wall. T3 is beyond the wall. A, B, C, D, less than 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 15, and greater than 15. T4A invades the peritoneum. T4B is invading other structures which may involve pelvic organs like ureter, skeletal muscles like levator, vessels, nerves outside the mesorectum, extra mesorectal compartments, bone, distal bowel. So all this can be easily identified on MRI scans. Then we have talked about MRF is involved if the tumor is less than 1 mm from MRF. Then the anal sphincter complex invasion has to be talked about, whether it's involving the internal sphincter, intersphincter plane, or the external sphincter. So this was the 8th edition of the TNM staging, and it has added one more M1C stage, which says peritoneal mets with or without metastasis of other organs. So step 4 is the very important thing is the EMVI, or the extramural vascular invasion. What does the term stands for? So basically, it's a tumor. It is extending via the lymphovascular spaces. The tumor excrescences, the tumor intensity can be seen within the vessels. So it has a poor prognosis, and it can also be easily seen and identified on MRI. Then we have the T stages is finished, the EMVI is finished. Now we come to the nodal staging. The nodal staging here, in cases of CA rectum, it's not only based upon size, it is based upon morphology of the lymph node also. So even if it's a less than 5 mm node, you can't say that it's not a positive node. If it is morphology is round, the signal intensity is heterogeneous, and it has irregular borders, then all the 3 characteristics of the morphology will add up, and then it becomes a suspicious lymph node. If it falls in the bracket of 5 to 9 mm, only 2 suspicious morphological characters are enough to say it is a suspicious node. And if it's greater than 9 mm, then any one morphological character, or even none of the above, will tell that if it is a suspicious node and has to be resected. So nodal status, N0 stands for no nodes. N1, if you can see 1 to 3 suspicious nodes. N2 is if it's more than 4 suspicious nodes. And you have to take the involve the extramesorectal nodes also in your reports, and to talk about the lateral pelvic lymph nodes, the obturator, the internal, the inguinal, and the highest involved nodes, which will be the pre-aortic, para-aortic, if any present, although unlikely, but if any present. Then we have to talk about the tumor deposits. Tumor deposits are again tumor signal intensity lesions seen within the mesorectum mostly. So this is how we have the MRI reporting template. So I would just give a few of the cases. This was a phase 1 70-year-old female with PR bleeding, and a colonoscopy they found a polypoidal mass at about 5 centimeters from anal verge. So this is how the mass was. This is a big polypoidal mass with a puckering at the posterior wall, and on the axial scans we can see the mass quite clearly. It is reaching up to the muscularis propria, and this is how the coronal oblique looks. So the tumor, the location from the anal verge, it was 5 centimeters. It is involving the mid and the upper rectum. distance from the anorectal junction. So anorectal junction here we can see. Anorectal junction is usually defined by two anatomical landmarks. So one is the internal sphincter muscles usually go thick at around here, and the other good landmark would say it's the upper limit of the puborectalis muscle. So puborectalis basically forms a sling, and it is arising from the inferior pubic ramus to the anococcygeal raphe. And this puborectalis sling can be easily identified when we scroll the sagittal images. So a sling-like thing goes around this, and the upper limit of this would identify us the anorectal junction. So here the anorectal junction is completely uninvolved, and the tumor is below anterior peritoneal reflection. The craniocaudal length is about this much. Circumferential location. So circumferential location, it is mostly from 2 to 5 o'clock position. Morphology is polypoid, no mucinous component, as I cannot see any T2 hyperintense components, and the T staging is PT2 or early T3. So here the muscularis propria is almost invaded, so it could be an early T3 stage. Another case, 37-year-old male with altered bowel habits with PR bleed. Now, here the tumor margins can be easily seen invading the muscularis propria and coming out from the rectal wall. So here it becomes a T3 stage, T3C stage. We have to identify the tumor, how much is the length of the tumor from the rectal wall. So location from the anal verge is about 3.8 centimeter. It's below anterior peritoneal reflection. The cranial caudal lens, the circumferential location, morphology, a mucinous component is present or not, a T staging, and minimum distance from MRF. Now, this is very important to identify the MRF for the thin hypointense line and to give a minimum distance from the MRF. So it becomes a CRM negative because the minimum distance is more than 2 mm. So 1 to 2 mm distance, if it's there, it becomes a threatened MRF, and less than 1 mm, it becomes involved MRF. Nodal staging, there were one suspicious lymph node. So post CT scan of a 76-year-old female, but here I have included this case just to show the mucinous component of the mass and to show the sphincter invasion. So from the anal verge, it's only 4 millimeter. Craniocaudal length is 6.8. The circumferential location, morphology is polypoid. The mucinous component is yes. And the anal canal, everything, the external, internal, and the intersphincteric space, everything is involved. This is external sphincter. This is involved. No intersphincteric plane can be seen on the right lateral wall, and the internal sphincter is involved. So this becomes a PT4B with possible invasion of vagina and possible invasion of the pelvic floor. This is below anterior peritoneal deflection, and there are at least 6 suspicious lymph nodes was in their scan. This was also another case with post-hysterectomy status, and this is a large tumor. Now this case has been included to show the EMVI. So this is how the EMVI looks like, the linear tubular excrescences of the tumor. So this was EMVI positive scan. I will just talk a little about the response assessment, which is gaining a very important role in MRI. So MRI features of response, how do they look like? The T2 signal changes and it requires a darker signal or a fibrosis. So this was the tumor initially, and post NACT it assumes a darker or the fibrotic signal has taken over. Similarly, the diffusion intensity also decreases, and so we take a diffusion scan as well for the response assessment. So this was a Mercury trial initially and indicated a good MRI tumor regression grade. The tumor regression grade 1 or 2 with the predominance of fibrosis, 3 with substantial tumor still, 4 with the predominance of tumor, and 5 was like no change was found in the tumor. So following therapy, we have another report template which states the YT stage and the YN stage, how much the tumor has regressed, and what are the T2 and diffusion signal. So based on the T2 and diffusion signal, we judge. This was a newer study which says a split scar sign, which is indicator of a sustained complete response after neoadjuvant therapy. And it's very frequently seen, and if read carefully, it is a complete clinical response. So nowadays, a watch and wait trial is also been on and it depends quite a lot on MRI. So post-treatment response, this was a case with a large tumor sitting on the right lateral wall. This is how the post-treatment, the tumor has shrunken, but still the involvement, this was supposed to be, this was likelihood of EMVI or large tumor deposits, but these were also shrunken. So this is the diffusion scan. This hyper intensity has shrunken to a minimal of this. This is how the tumor was initially, now shrunken to found a dark signal corresponding to fibrosis. This could be considered as a split scar sign as well. These are the contrast enhanced scans. So contrast enhanced scans in post staging of in post neoadjuvant staging of rectal cancer would has assumed importance nowadays and can be carried out. And the ESGAR guidelines on the rectal cancers, this about the nodes, the nodal size, the cancer staging advises to consider nodes less than 5 mm after neoadjuvant therapy to be considered benign. However, in nodes greater than 5 mm, false positive nodes are found. If complete luminal response, then when the nodes have responded, sometimes watchful waiting is considered with close follow-up of the nodes. So this was how the various level scores, if on the T2 diffusion and post-contrast, these features will suggest a complete response with the linear 1 to 2 mm hypointense scar with no residual hyperintensity on diffusion with normalized rectal wall or progressive enhancement of the layered fibrotic wall, no involved nodes will be complete response. Then we have the two categories as near complete response, then partial response, and then no response at all. So this was how the scoring was done. Then pathological grading and the MR tumor response grading were compared. This is the residual tumor mass, and how we gave it as on the T2 signal, it was given as scale 1, that is near complete response. On a diffusion scale was also given as near complete response. Contrast enhancement is found to be delayed enhancement, which again means that a fibrosis has occurred. This was given as near complete response. All the other details were given. Only the external sphincter was spared. So internal sphincter, intersphincteric fat was involved. So in summary, MRI is very important and it forms the mainstay of the imaging of CA rectum, and good quality MRI images are very important with small FOV, T2 oblique orthogonal images, and the location is everything. The low tumors, as we all know, are the bad ones. And the CRM MRF involvement is essential, and we need a keen trained eye so as not to miss even a small deposit or lymph node to reduce the chances of local recurrence. And the structured reporting is very beautifully shown and is being carried out at our institute so that we can not miss any other feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Snigdha. Before I hand over to Diksha and Ram, one question which we examiners very often ask the students in the exam when they get a case of CA rectum, that what is the preferred imaging modality? So some students say both CT and MRI, some say MRI pelvis, CT chest and abdomen, some say MRI abdomen pelvis and CT chest. So as a radiologist, what is the best imaging which would evaluate the local disease, the liver metastasis, and the chest also?
So I would suggest CT thorax abdomen pelvis so as not to miss any liver or chest metastasis, and MRI pelvis for the local evaluation of the CA rectum.
Okay, over to you, Ram and Diksha, please.
Thanks, Sanyukta. I would like to thank from all the surgeon sites. Actually, it was very informative talks for all of us.
Thank you, sir.
I would just like to know, since my residency time, we are hearing that MRI is the best modality for this rectal cancer. But still, in our practice, we are not getting this kind of images in most of the time. So MRI protocols for rectal cancer are still not well established at most of the center. What is the reason for that?
I think, sir, we are not. We need to know as a multidisciplinary team the prerequisites, the actual machinery, and as a radiologist, I would suggest working at like a private setup has like. I usually encounter these type of images only, and these are supervised by us radiologists only. So what is happening in India mostly at the local levels, We do not. The radiologist is not sitting on the screen on the screen to manage the protocol, the MRI happening. So that's one lag, I think. And of course, the imaging quality depends on the machine. There's a lot difference between the 1.5 Tesla images and the 3 Tesla images. And the FOV, the motility of the gut has to be taken care of. The susceptibility artifacts arise from the air in the rectum. That we decide that if it's large, we give a small amount of enema as well sometimes. But it has a doctor sitting over there mostly.
Other thing I would like to know, with newer generation of CT, with more than 1,000 slice CT, are they going to this kind of CT? Are they going to compete MRI for rectal cancer?
No, sir, never. Beautiful mucosal anatomy which MRI gives, it can never be given on CT, however better slices or however thinner slices. But what is important in cases of IBD and ulcerative colitis, the skip lesions, these can only be picked up on CT. Like if we are suspecting a young patient, and we have to rule out the skip lesions, when you have to rule out the other polyp synchronous lesions, then I would suggest undergoing for the local staging MRI rectum, but for the extensive staging it has to be CT enterography. Then also the machine, the reading, everything is very essential. Plays a role.
Great talk, Dr. Sanyukta. I have one
Thank you,
question.
sir. Thank you, ma'am.
One question for you for our younger colleagues, and I think just as a reminder to all practicing surgeons, what history and examination findings should be written in our OPD paper so that you can perform a good MRI for us?
Yes, ma'am. That's a very important question. So I would always want my colleagues to hand me over the colonoscopic, first of all, the DRE findings and the colonoscopic findings. These are very helpful to us for the planning of the tumor. If the sections do not cover the tumor and we are just assuming the tumor distance from the anal verge or the upper limit or the lower limit, doesn't make, then it's futile. The whole exercise is futile. But if we get a good DR, then we need, and the post neoadjuvant, we need the CEA levels also as well. So that gives us a confidence level that the CEA levels are decreasing, that patient is in remission. And yes, so I would need endoscopy, CEA levels, and any other clinical examination. If any fistulectomy has been performed before, that also. If any perineal surgery has been performed before, I would need that details as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I just want to emphasize this for our younger colleagues and for the residents who are listening to us, that a well-performed rectal examination has no shortcuts. Only if it's been performed well and it's been documented well, will the radiologist and the technician perform a good MRI, because the axial cuts need to be perpendicular to the longitudinal axis of the tumor. If they are not, then it stages the tumor incorrectly and actually has an impact on all the decisions that are made from that point onwards.
Right, ma'am.
I have a question, Sanyukta. This question came up during a case discussion just this Saturday, CA rectum. So in CA rectum, we would always like to evaluate the rest of the colon, but suppose the growth is causing luminal obstruction and then scope doesn't go beyond the growth, then what method would you prefer or advise to evaluate the rest of the colon? Because for a virtual colonoscopy also you would need the bowel to be prepared.
Yes, sir. So CT enterography, we usually use the negative oral contrast. So negative oral contrast is water containing. So we can give, so even if the scope is not passing by, we get to know if the walls are involved or is an extra luminal spread of the tumor. And then I would advise a CT enterography, CT enterography, and it will help us to find the level of the obstruction.
Not for the primary tumor. Primary tumor you would evaluate by MRI. We are now going to look at the rest of the colon, whether any synchronous lesions are present. So for doing a virtual colonoscopy or a CT colography, do you need the bowel to be prepared, or can we go ahead and get it done even with an unprepared bowel?
No, sir. We need to bowel to be prepared for a CCT colonoscope,
So
CCT
that was the
enterocoscopy.
question, that if there is
Okay.
obstruction and we cannot cleanse the bowel proximal to the tumor, then can radiology help us in any way
Yes, sir.
to
So we can. Yes, sir. So we can help we can ask the patient to fast for 4 to 6 hours, and that will help us enough. And even if the oral contrast is not palate not no, avoid he's not able to take the oral contrast, then also the fasting will suffice, and we can see the easily the virtual colonoscopy and the CT enterography will delineate the level.
So what is the smallest size of a lesion, say a polyp, which you can see on unprepared bowel on CT colonoscopy?
The smallest size of the polyp. So that's really difficult because the endoscopy has the obviously the luminal sensitivity more, but as such I couldn't remember any exact size of the literature, but
Diksha or Ram, would you like to say something on this? That scope is not passing through. You try to prepare the bowel, but the bowel doesn't get prepared. So how do you evaluate the remaining colon?
So, I mean, I think radiology will, there is no other option left except for a good CT scan. But at the same time, we must understand that it's not a foolproof endeavor. We might end up missing a few small polyps, but unlikely that a large growth or a malignant growth will be missed. But yes, I think the fact that the entire colon has not been evaluated completely needs to be documented in the patient's case file and history and discharge summary, and even the operative notes to be very extreme, because the patient should come back for a colonoscopy after the surgery at least. We also must realize that in an obstructing tumor, we are going to end up giving the patient some kind of chemotherapy, and the polyps will actually end up responding to that.
Yeah, I think Dr. Chetan wants to make a comment on that. We can proceed
Yes,
with
sir.
his.
Sir, I would like to answer this question in a very different way. First is I would say that this patient, if I can get a prior information about the proximal colon, it's well and good. But I'm not going to make a fuss about it, because the surgery I'm going to plan is a decompressive stoma, or at the most I can pass an endoscopic stent. Following decompression, I can then evaluate the rest of the bowel, because this patient is going to be subjected to neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy prior to a definitive surgery. So that is the way I would answer.
So that
Okay.
may be true for a rectal tumor, not necessarily for the colonic.
Yeah, for rectal tumor. I'm talking of rectal tumor.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I wanted to ask about the endoanal and endorectal coil MRI. We usually ask it for the assessment of the sphincters and fistula, sphincter injuries and level of injuries and extent and the fistulas. Any indication of that in the malignancy, CA rectum, especially endorectal coil we never ask, and sometimes it is not available and all those things.
So, ma'am, in the recent literature about like 8 to 10 years, I would say, they haven't talked about endorectal coil anywhere. And they only talk about the high resolution small FOV, T2 oblique and axial images are sufficient even for the fistula reporting and even for the malignancy. Or MRI pelvis and perineum has come upon the phased, we use a phased array coil, that's a body coil only, but we place it on the lower pelvis, and that's enough for giving us a high quality images.
For the sphincter assessment, benign injuries of the sphincter also without endoanal coil, you will be able to report.
Yes, ma'am. In my experience, we are doing only the without endorectal coil. We do not have it.
Sayukta, one last question to complete the discussion for the benefit of students. Where in your investigation algorithm will you place the role of PET-CT for CA rectum?
Yes, sir. So, as a radiologist, PET-CT comes in the similar, if the locally advanced tumors have to be staged on this, stage on the MRI. But if the if the patient is not undergoing a CCT chest and a CCT tap, thorax, abdomen, pelvis, I would suggest replacing it with a PET CT would also suffice. Like a PET CT, it has to be done for obviously the whole staging of the tumor, the complete, but cannot replace the MRI rectum for the local staging.
It cannot replace for sure.
Yes.
Would you always advise it prior to giving neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy?
Prior to, yes, sir. That gives a complete overall view. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's